I worked for my family business for 10 years, transforming it from a struggling operation into a thriving enterprise. My dedication increased sales by 40%. When our executive director position opened up, I was certain my father would recognize my contributions. Instead, during our family meeting, he announced my lazy brother Jack would take the role despite never having worked a single day at our company. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever felt betrayed by your own family. 10 years ago, I made a decision that would shape the course of my life. At 32 years old, with a prestigious business degree in hand, I turned down lucrative offers from major corporations to help save Morgan Logistics, the family shipping company my grandfather founded 50 years ago. The business was struggling to keep up with technological advancements in the industry, and I saw an opportunity to revitalize the legacy my grandfather had built. Morgan Logistics had once been the premier shipping company in the Midwest, handling everything from small package deliveries to major industrial equipment transportation. My grandfather had built it from nothing into a respected name in the industry, but in recent years the company had failed to adapt to digital transformation and was losing market share to more innovative competitors. From day one, I threw myself completely into the work. 12-hour days became my norm, not because anyone asked me to, but because I truly believed in what we were doing. I oversaw the implementation of a new digital tracking system, personally visited potential clients to rebuild relationships, and created partnerships with international companies looking to expand their operations in our region. The results spoke for themselves. Within 3 years, I had increased our revenue by 40%. Our operating costs decreased by 25%, thanks to the new systems I implemented. Most impressively, I secured 3 major contracts with international corporations that put Morgan Logistics back on the map. My relationship with my father, Thomas Morgan, was always complicated. He had impossibly high standards and rarely offered praise even when it was clearly deserved. No matter what I accomplished, he always compared me to an idealized version of my grandfather, suggesting I could never truly measure up to his legacy. Still, I persisted believing that eventually my results would speak for themselves. Then there was my brother Jack. At 27, Jack had never shown any interest in the family business. He dropped out of college after 2 years, constantly borrowed money from our parents, and cycled through various jobs without ever committing to a career path. Despite his lack of achievement, he maintained a close relationship with our parents, especially our father, who seemed to forgive his shortcomings much more easily than he forgave mine. Everything changed when our executive director, Richard Thompson, announced his retirement. This was the opportunity I had been working toward for years. My colleagues expected the position would go to me, and many employees expressed their support. I began preparing a detailed development plan that included expansion into new international markets, implementation of cutting-edge logistics technology, and a 5-year roadmap to double the size of the company. I truly believed this was the moment my father would finally recognize my value and commitment to Morgan Logistics. After all, the numbers could not be denied. The company was thriving under my leadership, and I had proven myself capable of taking us to the next level. The future looked promising not just for me, but for everyone at Morgan Logistics. I felt confident as I walked into the family meeting where the announcement would be made. The family meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon in the main conference room at Morgan Logistics headquarters. The room had been recently renovated with a large oak table and leather chairs, a project my father had insisted on despite my concerns about unnecessary expenses. Family members began arriving around 3 o'clock, including my mother Catherine, my younger sister Diana, and several cousins who held minor shares in the company. Jack arrived 15 minutes late as usual, wearing jeans and a casual shirt while everyone else was in business attire. He flashed his typical carefree smile as he took a seat across from me, not seeming to understand the importance of the occasion. My father sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as he called the meeting to order. The tension in the room was palpable as my father began his speech. He talked about the history of Morgan Logistics, the legacy of my grandfather, and the challenges the company had faced in recent years. Then, he acknowledged my contributions, mentioning the increased revenue and the new clients I had brought in. My heart swelled with pride, thinking this was leading to the announcement I had been waiting for. "Arthur has done remarkable work for this company," my father said, nodding in my direction. "His dedication is unquestionable, and we have all benefited from his efforts." I straightened in my chair, preparing myself for what I thought would be the culmination of a decade of hard work. However, my father continued, "As we look to the future, I believe Morgan Logistics needs fresh blood and a new approach. We need someone who can think outside the box and take bold risks to propel us forward in this competitive industry." A knot began forming in my stomach as I sensed where this was heading. That is why I have decided that Jack will take on the role of executive director, effective immediately. The room fell silent. My mother started clapping enthusiastically, while other family members exchanged confused glances. Jack sat up straighter, a smug expression crossing his face as he nodded in acceptance of the position. Jack brings a creative vision and natural leadership abilities that will take this company in exciting new directions, my father explained, seemingly oblivious to the shock on my face. His fresh perspective is exactly what Morgan Logistics needs at this critical juncture. I felt as though I had been punched in the stomach. 10 years of sacrifice and dedication dismissed in favor of my brother, who had never shown the slightest interest in the company. The betrayal cut deep, not just because I had been passed over, but because the decision made absolutely no business sense. After the meeting, I cornered my father in his office, desperate for a real explanation. "Dad, I do not understand," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Jack has zero experience in logistics. He has never worked for the company. How can you possibly think he is qualified for this position?" My father leaned back in his chair, looking irritated by my questions. "Arthur, you are too rigid in your thinking, too focused on processes and numbers. Jack has vision. He can see possibilities you cannot. Vision does not run a company," I argued. "Experience does. Results do. I have proven myself over and over again." "That is enough," my father snapped. "The decision is made. Your job now is to support your brother and ensure a smooth transition. That is what family does." I left his office, feeling like the ground had been pulled from beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew about hard work and merit had been upended. Family loyalty, it seemed, only went one way in the Morgan household. Within weeks, Jack began making changes that confirmed my worst fears. He redesigned the company logo at considerable expense, ordered luxurious new furniture for his office, and fired several long-standing employees to make room for friends who knew nothing about the logistics industry. His entire approach to business seemed to be based on appearances rather than substance. Jack's attitude toward me changed dramatically as well. The laid-back brother I had known transformed into an arrogant executive who regularly dismissed my input during meetings and made decisions without consulting the management team. When I tried to advise him about potential problems, he accused me of undermining his authority. The pressure from my family intensified as well. My mother called regularly to insist I should be supporting your brother and not making things difficult. Other family members echoed this sentiment, suggesting that my resistance was merely jealousy rather than legitimate concern for the company. Meanwhile, our business partners and clients began expressing concerns about the leadership change. Long-standing clients called me directly asking what was happening and whether they should be worried about the future of our partnership. Several of our senior managers started updating their resumes, sensing the approaching storm. The situation became increasingly tense as Jack continued to ignore my warnings and advice. Each day brought a new crisis, and each crisis pushed me closer to my breaking point. The company I had spent a decade rebuilding was being dismantled piece by piece, and I was expected to stand by and watch it happen in the name of family loyalty. 3 months after Jack took over as executive director, the first clear signs of decline appeared in our quarterly reports. Sales had dropped by 15% across all divisions, an unprecedented decline in such a short period. Client retention rates were plummeting, and operating costs had increased due to Jack's frivolous spending on office renovations and unnecessary business trips. The real disaster struck when Jack signed a major contract with Horizon Transport, a new company that had been recommended by one of his friends. I had researched the company and warned Jack about their questionable financial stability and history of contract disputes, but he dismissed my concerns as negativity. 6 weeks later, Horizon Transport filed for bankruptcy, leaving us with unpaid invoices totaling over $300,000 and a warehouse full of undelivered goods. I worked overtime trying to salvage what I could from the situation. I negotiated with the bankruptcy trustee, found alternative shipping routes for the stranded cargo, and personally called each affected client to assure them we would honor our commitments despite the setback. Many nights, I stayed at the office until midnight, cleaning up messes that could have been avoided had Jack simply listened. Despite my efforts, Jack continued to make decisions without consultation. He fired our long-standing financial controller and replaced her with his college roommate who had minimal accounting experience. He canceled our investment in a new fleet management system that would have improved efficiency, claiming it was unnecessary technology. 6 months into Jack's leadership, the board of directors called an emergency meeting to address the company's rapidly deteriorating financial situation. Sitting around the same oak table where Jack had been appointed board members, now voiced serious concerns about the direction of the company. "Our cash reserves are dangerously low," reported Walter Jenkins, our external financial advisor. "At the current rate of decline, Morgan Logistics will be in serious financial trouble within 4 to 6 months. Jack sat at the head of the table, visibly uncomfortable as the presentation continued. When questioned directly about the declining numbers, he blamed challenging market conditions and unexpected industry disruptions rather than taking responsibility for his decisions. I attempted to suggest a recovery plan, including cutting unnecessary expenses and refocusing on our core clients. But Jack interrupted me before I could finish. "I think we have heard enough negativity for one meeting," he said dismissively. "What this company needs is positivity and faith in our vision. The numbers will turn around." After that meeting, I found myself increasingly pushed to the margins of the company. Jack stopped inviting me to strategic planning sessions and began making major decisions without informing me until after the fact. My role became primarily damage control, trying to maintain relationships with clients who were growing increasingly frustrated with the company's declining service quality. The staff morale plummeted as employees sensed the company was in trouble. Our break room, once filled with lively conversation, became quiet and tense. Several of our most talented employees submitted their resignations, including Susan, from client relations, who had been with the company for 15 years. Then came the devastating blow I had been dreading. Transcontinental Shipping, our largest client, accounting for nearly 20% of our annual revenue, terminated their contract. They had been one of the first major clients I had secured years ago, and I had nurtured the relationship personally. Their departure sent shockwaves through the company and triggered a wave of panic. A few days after losing Transcontinental, 3 of my most trusted colleagues, Susan, Derek, and Marcus, asked to meet me for coffee after work. They had all been with Morgan Logistics for years and had supported me through thick and thin. "Arthur, something has to be done," Susan said quietly. "The company is falling apart. Everyone can see it except your family." Derek nodded in agreement. "People are updating their resumes. Nobody believes we will last another year under current leadership." "What can I do?" I asked, feeling genuinely helpless for the first time in my career. "My father has made his choice clear. Jack is in charge now. Maybe it is time to make a different choice, Marcus suggested. One that does not involve watching everything you built crumble. Their words stayed with me, planting a seed that would eventually grow into a plan. The final breaking point came when Jack mishandled a time-sensitive shipment for Medicorp, a pharmaceutical company that had been with us for nearly a decade. The shipment contained temperature-sensitive medications worth over $1 million. Jack had reassigned the delivery to an inexperienced driver who failed to maintain the required temperature controls. The entire shipment was ruined, and Medicorp immediately terminated their contract. That evening, my father and mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. They looked worried, which was a stark change from the confidence they had displayed when appointing Jack. "We need your help," my father said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Things at the company are not going as well as we had hoped." "You mean Jack is running it into the ground?" I replied flatly. "That is not fair, Arthur," my mother interjected. "Your brother is trying his best. He just needs some guidance." Guidance? I could not contain my frustration any longer. What he needed was experience before being handed control of a multi-million-dollar company. What he needed was to earn the position through hard work and results, not family connections. "I warned you this would happen." My father bristled at my tone. "We are still your family, and Morgan Logistics is still your legacy too. Are you really going to stand by and watch it fail because your pride was hurt?" His words ignited something in me, not a desire to help save the sinking ship, but a clarity about what I needed to do next. The 10 years I had invested in Morgan Logistics had taught me everything I needed to know about the industry, about leadership, and about myself. Perhaps it was time to use that knowledge in a different way. The decision did not come easily, but once made I felt a sense of purpose I had not experienced since my early days at Morgan Logistics. I would start my own logistics company, one built on the principles of innovation, integrity, and exceptional service, all the values that Jack had abandoned. I incorporated precision logistics the following week, using my personal savings to secure a modest office space across town. The name reflected my commitment to exactitude and reliability qualities that had made me successful at Morgan Logistics, but had been dismissed as rigid by my father. My first order of business was to create a detailed business plan that addressed all the shortcomings I had observed in the industry. "We are still your family, and Morgan Logistics is still your legacy too. Are you really going to stand by and watch it fail because your pride was hurt?" His words ignited something in me, not a desire to help save the sinking ship, but a clarity about what I needed to do next. The 10 years I had invested in Morgan Logistics had taught me everything I needed to know about the industry, about leadership, and about myself. Perhaps it was time to use that knowledge in a different way. I reached out to former colleagues who had left Morgan Logistics, including Susan Derrick and Marcus, offering them positions that matched their skills and provided opportunities for growth that they had been denied under Jack's leadership. Their enthusiasm to join my venture confirmed I was on the right path. "I never thought I would leave Morgan after 15 years, Susan told me, as she signed her employment contract. "But what you are building here is what Morgan used to be and what it should have become under your leadership." With my core team in place, I began contacting potential clients. I was careful not to directly poach from Morgan Logistics, focusing instead on companies that had already terminated their contracts or expressed dissatisfaction with the declining service quality. My reputation in the industry proved valuable as several clients agreed to meetings based solely on their previous experiences working with me. My first major breakthrough came when I secured contracts with Bellamy Manufacturing and Westland Distribution, two former Morgan Logistics clients who had left after Jack took over. Their combined business provided the steady revenue stream Precision Logistics needed to establish itself as a legitimate competitor in the market. News of my new venture spread quickly, eventually reaching my family. The reaction was swift and furious. My father called one evening, his voice tight with anger. "So this is how you show family loyalty," he demanded. "By stabbing your brother in the back and trying to destroy what your grandfather built, I am not destroying anything," I replied calmly. "Morgan Logistics is doing that quite effectively, without my help. I am building something new, something that honors the values. Grandfather actually stood for quality, reliability, and respect for employees and clients alike." The conversation ended with my father threatening legal action, claiming I had stolen proprietary information, though we both knew this was untrue. I had been meticulously careful to build my business systems from scratch, specifically to avoid such accusations. A few days later, my father showed up at my office unannounced. He looked older than I remembered, the strain of Morgan Logistics troubles evident in the new lines on his face. "This has to stop, Arthur," he said, gesturing around at my growing operation. "Come back to Morgan. We can work something out with your brother." I shook my head. "It is too late for that, Dad. I gave 10 years of my life to Morgan Logistics. I earned that executive director position, and you gave it to Jack because he is your favorite, not because he was qualified. Now I am building something on my own terms where merit actually matters." My father left without resolving anything, but the confrontation strengthened my resolve. Precision Logistics was not just a business venture for me anymore. It was a statement about my values and my worth. Surprisingly, my mother visited me the following week. Unlike my father, she seemed genuinely interested in understanding my new company. She walked around the office, noting the efficient layout and the positive energy of my team. "You seem happy here," she observed. "Happier than I have seen you in years." "I am," I admitted. "For the first time, I am building something that truly reflects my vision, not trying to fit into someone else's." Before leaving, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Your grandfather would have been proud." It was the first genuine support I had received from either parent in years. Meanwhile, Morgan Logistics continued its downward spiral. They laid off 20% of their workforce, closed 2 regional branches, and lost their credit line with First National Bank due to missed loan payments. Jack appeared increasingly frazzled in industry events, while my father stopped attending them altogether. In stark contrast, Precision Logistics thrived. Within 6 months, we had exceeded our initial business projections, established a reputation for exceptional service, and begun expanding into specialized logistics services that Morgan had never explored. Our client list grew weekly, and we had to move to larger offices to accommodate our expanding team. The industry took notice. Logistics Today, the leading trade publication, featured Precision Logistics in their Companies to Watch section, highlighting our innovative approach and rapid growth. The article made no direct mention of Morgan Logistics, but the contrast between the rising newcomer and the failing established company was implicit. Success did not come without challenges. There were sleepless nights worrying about cash flow, difficult decisions about which opportunities to pursue, and the constant pressure of being responsible for employees who had trusted me enough to leave secure positions. But these challenges felt different from those I had faced at Morgan Logistics. These were the growing pains of creation, rather than the frustration of being held back. For the first time in my professional life, I was being judged solely on my own merits, not compared to an idealized version of my grandfather or measured against arbitrary standards set by my father. The liberation was profound, allowing me to lead with confidence and clarity. 1 year after launching Precision Logistics, I received the news that Morgan Logistics had been sold to Vertex Transportation, one of our longtime competitors. Their words stayed with me, planting a seed that would eventually grow into a plan. The final breaking point came when Jack mishandled a time-sensitive shipment for Medicorp, a pharmaceutical company that had been with us for nearly a decade. The shipment contained temperature-sensitive medications worth over $1 million. Jack had reassigned the delivery to an inexperienced driver who failed to maintain the required temperature controls. "Can we meet?" he asked, his voice lacking the authoritative tone I had grown accustomed to, just the two of us. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop downtown. My father arrived, looking diminished, the confident business leader replaced by a tired old man coming to terms with a significant failure. "I was wrong," he said, simply after we had sat in silence for several minutes. "About Jack, about you, about what the company needed. I was wrong about all of it." The admission stunned me. In all my life, I had never heard my father acknowledge a mistake. "Why Jack?" I asked the question that had haunted me for over a year. "You knew he was not qualified." My father sighed heavily. "Jack always needed more help than you. You were always so capable, so independent. I thought you would be fine regardless, and that Jack needed the opportunity more. I was trying to protect him, and in doing so, I lost everything, including your respect." The conversation marked the beginning of a slow healing process. The damage could not be undone, but acknowledgement was a crucial first step toward reconciliation. My father and I would never have the relationship I had once hoped for, but perhaps we could build something new based on mutual respect rather than expectation and disappointment. Jack took the failure of Morgan Logistics hard, but it proved to be a valuable lesson for him. The experience of actual consequences for his actions and decisions forced him to develop a level of humility and responsibility he had previously lacked. He enrolled in business courses and eventually found a position with a marketing firm where his creative tendencies could be appropriately channeled and supervised. Precision Logistics continued to thrive, expanding into international markets and developing specialized services for industries ranging from pharmaceuticals to aerospace. I built the company on principles of meritocracy and transparency, ensuring that promotions were based on performance and that every employee understood their value to the organization. The journey taught me that sometimes the greatest obstacle to success is trying to succeed within structures that do not value your contributions. Real fulfillment came not from gaining my father's approval, but from creating something that reflected my own values and vision. I realized that my worth was never dependent on my father's recognition or the family legacy. It was always within me, in my knowledge, my work ethic, and my ability to lead with integrity. Sometimes the most painful betrayals lead us to where we truly belong. I did not build Precision Logistics to prove my father wrong. I built it to prove to myself that I was right about what I could achieve. That realization was the most valuable outcome of this difficult journey. And if there is one thing I would share with you from my experience, it is this: never let someone else's failure to see your value diminish your sense of self-worth. The right path sometimes only appears when the familiar one is blocked. Have you ever had to create your own opportunity after being overlooked or undervalued? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and personal growth. Your support means everything to this channel. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the detours in life lead to the most beautiful destinations.